That relentless hum in your chest, the one that whispers, "What if?" until you can barely breathe. Does it feel like a curse? Like a cruel, invisible chain wrapped around your spirit, tightening with every passing day, with every unanswered prayer? You've pleaded, you've bargained, you've fought with all your might, and still it's there, a shadow clinging to your soul. What if I told you that one of the most brilliant, joyful, and profoundly Christian minds of the 20th century, G.K. Chesterton, a man who seemed to overflow with laughter and light, believed that this very crucible of anxiety, this place of profound shadow and suffocating fear, isn't where God abandons you, but precisely where He leans in, waiting to speak directly to the core of your being. Gilbert Keith Chesterton, a name often synonymous with booming laughter, paradoxical wit, and an almost childlike wonder at the world. We picture him, the larger-than-life figure, dispensing wisdom with a twinkle in his eye. But beneath that robust and joyful exterior was a soul who had intimately, terrifyingly known the darkest corridors of the human mind. In his late teens and early 20s, long before the world celebrated him, Chesterton plunged into what he later described as a period of profound spiritual and psychological crisis. This wasn't just a fleeting teenage angst, it was a horrifying descent into a nihilistic void. He wrestled with solipsism, the terrifying, isolating idea that only his own mind was sure to exist, that everything else could be a figment of his imagination. Can you imagine the sheer, unadulterated anxiety that such a thought breeds? A universe contained entirely within your own skull, with no external reality to anchor you, no solid ground beneath your feet? He dabbled with pessimistic philosophies, and even, by his own candid accounts, with darker, unwholesome spiritual curiosities, desperately seeking any kind of meaning, any kind of escape in a world that felt increasingly unreal and meaningless. This wasn't an intellectual game he was playing, it was a torturous internal battle, a daily war waged within his own spirit. The anxiety he experienced wasn't just about worrying about future events, it was a fundamental terror about the very nature of reality, the stability of his own sanity, the horrifying possibility that nothing mattered. He described the feeling of the whole universe being shaken from its foundations and his own identity dissolving into that chaos. This was a young man confronting the abyss head-on, feeling the bedrock of his being crumble beneath him. He felt, as he later wrote with chilling honesty, the devilish solitude of egoism, the hell of being oneself. This was a bone-deep terror, a precursor to the kind of existential anxiety that philosophers would later dissect. But Chesterton was living it, breathing it, nearly suffocating under its weight.
And yet, it was precisely through this darkness, not by neatly sidestepping it or pretending it wasn't there, that Chesterton found his way to a radiant, robust, and profoundly grateful faith. He had to touch the very bottom to feel the utter, bleak desolation of a world conceived without God, without objective truth or inherent goodness, before he could fully, explosively appreciate the astonishing gift of a world that was imbued with these very things. His later joy was not the joy of ignorance, but the joy of one who had seen the alternative and knew, with every fiber of his being, how precious the light really was. He didn't explicitly coin the phrase, "anxiety is God's megaphone," but his entire life and philosophy point to this staggering truth. When our own voices of reassurance falter and die, when the deafening clamor of the world finally fades because we are too overwhelmed, too broken to hear it, when all our carefully constructed defenses and illusions of self-sufficiency crumble under the relentless weight of what if, we are left in a stark, uncomfortable, and utterly exposed silence. And in that silence, a different kind of listening becomes not only possible, but necessary. So when Chesterton suggests that God speaks in such moments, he isn't necessarily talking about an audible voice thundering from heaven or a sudden dramatic vision, though those are not ruled out of God's vast repertoire. More often, for Chesterton, and perhaps for us, God's speech in these times of intense anxiety is experienced as a profound, almost imperceptible shift in perception, a dawning realization that cuts through the fog. It's the breaking through of a fundamental truth that the noise of ordinary life, or the internal noise of our own pride, our fears, and our relentless self-reliance usually obscures.
What did Chesterton find when his own illusions were stripped away by this intense period of anxiety and doubt? He found, paradoxically, reality itself, solid, astonishing, and true. He discovered that the world outside his own tormented head was not only real, but gratuitously, shockingly good. He realized that existence itself was not a right to be demanded, but an incredible, undeserved, and constantly renewed gift. This is crucial. His emergence from anxiety wasn't into a fairy tale world where problems magically cease to exist, but into a world where even the problems, even the lingering shadows of fear, were set against a vast, luminous backdrop of fundamental givenness, of a primal, cosmic yes from a loving creator. He began to see that virtues like courage, love, fidelity, and even laughter weren't mere social constructs or clever evolutionary tricks, but timeless echoes of an objective moral order, luminous sparks of a divine design. The fear didn't vanish entirely, as no human being is ever entirely free from its touch, but it lost its ultimate power. It could no longer convince him that life was meaningless because he had been to the very edge of meaninglessness and found, to his eternal shock and everlasting gratitude, that something robustly, fiercely meaningful lay beyond it, beneath it, and within it. It's in this state of profound vulnerability, when we are forced to admit our own insufficiency, our own inability to fix ourselves, that the whispers of God can cut through the internal storm. It might be a sudden, unexpected wave of peace that settles over the inner chaos for a fleeting, precious moment. It might be a new, gentle insight into the root of our fear, not a magical solution, but a deeper, more compassionate understanding. It could be the overwhelming, undeniable sense of needing something or someone far greater than ourselves. A need that in itself is a form of profound prayer, a turning of the broken heart towards home. When we finally cry out from the depths of our being, "I can't do this anymore. I don't understand this. I am utterly lost." That very cry, born of the crucible of anxiety, can be the sound of our hearts finally breaking open enough to receive an answer that isn't of our own frantic making, an answer that gently, firmly, lovingly says, "But I am. I understand, and you, my child, are found." Maybe you're going through something achingly similar right now. Perhaps it's not just a gentle thrum of worry, but a roaring, deafening cacophony of intrusive thoughts that loop endlessly, relentlessly, painting vivid, catastrophic scenarios of failure, loss, rejection, or humiliation. Maybe it's the icy, vice-like grip of panic that seems to materialize from nowhere, making your heart pound like a trapped bird against your ribs, your breath catch painfully in your throat, your hands tremble uncontrollably as if an earthquake is happening only within you. Perhaps it's the gnawing, persistent dread that settles in your stomach like a cold, heavy stone, making even simple, everyday tasks feel monumental, almost impossible. For some, anxiety manifests as a suffocating blanket of profound fatigue, a weariness that sleep doesn't touch, coupled with an infuriating inability to quiet the mind enough to find restful sleep in the first place.
For others, it's a constant, agonizing muscle tension, a body perpetually braced for an unseen impact, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched. It might be that dizzying, disorienting feeling of unreality, as if you're watching your own life through a thick, distorting fog, a sense of depersonalization where you feel strangely detached from yourself, an observer of your own suffering, or derealization, where the familiar world around you suddenly seems strange, dreamlike, and threatening. It can be the obsessive, exhausting need for reassurance that never quite satisfies, the constant checking and rechecking, the irritability that strains precious relationships, or the profound difficulty in concentrating, making work, study, or even simple conversations feel like wading through thick, resistant treacle.
And this isn't just uncomfortable, it's profoundly disorienting. This is where that stripping away process happens, often painfully and without our consent. When anxiety is at its zenith, your usual, reliable coping mechanisms, your sharp logic, your formidable willpower, your carefully constructed routines, your "I can handle anything" attitude, they often crumble like sand castles before a relentless tide. The thoughts that once felt like your thoughts, manageable and understandable, now feel alien, hostile, invasive, yet utterly, terrifyingly convincing. Your confidence in your ability to navigate the world, even your own internal landscape, can be shattered into a million pieces. You might feel a profound, terrifying loss of control, not just over external events, but over your own mind, your own body, your own reactions. The cherished illusion of self-sufficiency, that subtle, pervasive pride we all carry that whispers, "I've got this, I don't need help," is mercilessly, brutally exposed as fragile, a thin veneer over a much deeper vulnerability. You are left feeling raw, exposed, perhaps even deeply ashamed of your perceived weakness, your inability to just snap out of it. Everything you thought defined you, your competence, your calm, your strength, your independence, can feel like it's been stripped away, leaving you bare and shivering before the raging storm of your own internal experience.
Second, the next time that overwhelming wave of anxiety washes over you, when the fear feels all-consuming, instead of only fighting it, or frantically fleeing from it, or surrendering to its bleakest narratives, try, if you can, to pause, just for a moment. In the very eye of the storm, as terrifying as that sounds, dare to ask a quiet, hesitant question. God, if there's something you want me to hear in this, something beyond the raw fear itself, something you are trying to show me or teach me, please open my ears, open my heart. This isn't about masochistically welcoming the pain, but about courageously seeking meaning within it. Is this anxiety, perhaps, revealing an area where you've unknowingly placed your ultimate security in something other than God? Your career, your relationships, your health, your own abilities? Is it highlighting a deep-seated fear of letting go, of truly surrendering control over aspects of your life you were never truly meant to control? Is it stripping away a superficial layer of your existence, the masks you wear, forcing you to confront deeper, more honest questions about who you truly are beneath it all, and what you genuinely, authentically value? And here's where Chesterton's fierce gratitude becomes a lifeline. He championed a deliberate, almost combative thankfulness for the sheer, astonishing fact of existence. He believed passionately that the modern world, in its rush and cynicism, had tragically lost its capacity for wonder, taking for granted the daily, breathtaking miracles that constantly surround us. For Chesterton, the most ordinary things were utterly extraordinary simply because they were. He famously wrote, "We are perishing for want of wonder, not for want of wonders." Think about that. The sun rising every single morning isn't just a predictable astronomical event. It's a daily resurrection, a fresh, unearned gift of light and warmth.
The grass isn't just green, it's an almost impossibly vibrant hue, a living carpet laid out by an unseen benevolent hand. He'd even gaze at a common lamppost and see it not as mundane urban furniture, but as a kind of iron tree with a fiery fruit, a testament to human ingenuity, reflecting a divine spark of creativity. He believed that thanks is the highest form of thought, and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder.
When anxiety constricts your world, making it feel small, dark, suffocating, and relentlessly centered on your fear, this Chestertonian gratitude offers a radical, revolutionary counter-movement. It's an active, conscious rebellion against the tyranny of what if by deliberately, tenaciously focusing on what is. It's about consciously wrenching your gaze away from the internal storm and fixing it, even for a fleeting moment, on an external, objective good, however small. You might not feel thankful. Your anxiety might scream at you that there's nothing whatsoever to be thankful for in your current state. But Chesterton would urge you to choose it anyway, as an act of faith, an act of defiance against despair. Start small. Almost absurdly so, just as he would encourage. That cup of tea you're holding? It's not just hot water and leaves. It's a small island of warmth, a tiny, tangible comfort in a vast and sometimes bewildering universe. The specific pattern on your wallpaper or the grain of wood on your table, someone designed that. Someone crafted it. It exists. It's real. The simple, often overlooked fact that you can see these words, that you can hear this message, that your heart is beating, that you are breathing. These are staggering, monumental gifts, repeated every second. This deliberate act of noticing and naming, this cataloging of blessings, as some might call it, isn't about denying or minimizing the very real pain of anxiety. It's about steadfastly refusing to let that pain be the only thing in your field of vision. It's a powerful way of declaring, even in this darkness, there is still light. Even in this fear, there is still gift. Even in this suffering, there is still presence. Each small, chosen act of gratitude becomes a pinprick of light in the overwhelming darkness, slowly, painstakingly reorienting your soul, your focus, your hope towards the eternal source of all good things. Remember, God's voice in these deeply challenging moments might not be a booming revelation or an instant miraculous cure. It might be far more subtle, a gentle shift in your perspective, a fleeting, unexpected sense of peace that settles over the turmoil for just long enough to catch your breath. A sudden, quiet clarity about one small, manageable next step you can take. Or perhaps, most powerfully, it's a renewed, visceral awareness of your desperate, profound need for Him, which in itself is a form of deep, honest communion. It might be the quiet, unshakable realization that even if you fall, even if you falter, even if you feel you are utterly failing, His hands are there, beneath you, around you, ready to catch you. This arduous journey with anxiety, when seen through Chesterton's hopeful and hard-won perspective, becomes less of an arbitrary curse and more of a difficult, challenging, yet potentially sacred path. A path where the superficial illusions are burned away in the fire of suffering, and what remains is a raw, honest, and ultimately more profound and resilient connection with the divine. It's an unexpected invitation to find God not in the absence of struggle, but in its very messy, painful heart. G.K. Chesterton's life and wisdom powerfully remind us that our deepest wounds, our most frightening shadows, our most persistent anxieties do not disqualify us from God's presence or His purpose for our lives. They can, in fact, become the very unexpected places where we encounter Him most profoundly, most authentically. That anxiety you feel, that seems to scream louder than any prayer, that threatens to drown out all hope, It might just be hushing the relentless noise of the world and the equally relentless noise of our own striving, just enough for you to finally hear a sacred, gentle whisper. So, I want to ask you, with genuine care, have you ever felt that? A moment where in the very depths of your anxiety, your despair, or your confusion, you sensed something beyond the fear? A subtle nudge? An unexpected comfort? A surprising insight? A moment of unexplainable peace? Or perhaps even the quiet, unmistakable presence of God? What practices, whether spiritual, mental, or physical, or perhaps what specific shifts in perspective have helped you navigate these overwhelming feelings? What has your own journey with anxiety, however painful, taught you about yourself, about your resilience, about your need for others, or about God? Your story, your struggle, your hard-won wisdom, your moment of unexpected grace, it could be the very thing someone else reading this, someone feeling utterly alone in their fear right now, desperately needs to hear today. Please share your experiences, your insights, and your encouragement in the comments below. Let's not allow anxiety to achieve its goal of isolating us. Let's transform this space into a living testament, a chorus of voices affirming that even in the valley of deep shadows, God is speaking, God is present, and we are, together, learning to listen. Don't forget to reflect on this. Perhaps the next time anxiety raises its voice, you'll listen even more intently for a different, quieter, more loving voice underneath it all.